Hi, I'm Olivia, and me and Alina are going to be presenting our project about the Gorongosa elephants in Mozambique. Throughout this presentation, we're going to connect the biology units we learned this year to elephants and show why they are so important to ecosystems and the environment. One major issue affecting these elephants is poaching. Many elephants with large tusks are targeted because their tusks contain ivory, which is sold illegally. Because of this, elephant populations and their ecosystems have been greatly affected over time. We'll also explain how the topics we learn will connect to the elephants and their survival. By the end of our presentation, we hope you'll have a better understanding on both the science behind the elephants and why protecting them is so important. In the chemistry of life, there are four main macromolecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. These molecules are important because they help living organisms survive. For elephants, carbohydrates give them energy, lipids store energy, proteins help build muscles and tissue, and nucleic acids, like DNA, carry genetic information. Another important process is hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is when water is used to break down large molecules into smaller molecules. Elephants use hydrolysis every day when digesting food like grass, leaves, and lettuce. Bodies break down food so nutrients can be absorbed and used for energy. DNA is also important because it carries genetic information that determines traits in elephants, such as size, ear shape, and tusks. Scientists can study elephant DNA to learn about their populations and family relationships. One way scientists study DNA is through gel electrophoresis. This process separates DNA into bands so scientists can compare genetic similarities and differences. This helps scientists identify elephant populations and study biodiversity. In this unit, we learn about cellular respiration and how organisms get energy. Elephants are heterotrophs, which means they cannot make their own energy. Instead, they eat plants to get energy. Plants are autotrophs because they can make food through photosynthesis. Elephants use cellular respiration to release energy from the food they eat. This process happens in the mitochondria, which is also known as the powerhouse of the cell. There are three main stages of cellular respiration: glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain. During these stages, glucose is broken down and energy is released in the form of ATP, which cells use for energy. Elephants are also part of the carbon cycle. They breathe in oxygen and release carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. When elephants eat plants, they are also transferring energy through the ecosystem. This slide explains how genetics connects to elephants. Gregor Mendel developed the law of inheritance, which explains how traits are passed from parents to offspring. Traits are controlled by genes, and some genes are dominant while others are recessive. Scientists can use test crosses and pedigrees to study inheritance patterns in elephants. Pedigrees help track traits through generations and show whether traits are dominant or recessive. Sometimes organisms show intermediate phenotypes, which can happen through codominance or incomplete dominance. This means traits can blend or both traits can appear together. One interesting genetic trait in elephants is tusklessness. In some elephant populations, more elephants are born without tusks because of genetic mutations. Scientists believe this became more common because elephants with tusks were being targeted by poachers, so tuskless elephants had a better chance of surviving and passing on their genes. This slide connects elephants to evolution and natural selection. There are two types of evolution: microevolution and macroevolution. Microevolution refers to small changes within a population over time, while macroevolution refers to large evolutionary changes over long periods. Charles Darwin developed the theory of natural selection. Natural selection means organisms with favorable traits are more likely to survive and reproduce. This idea is often called survival of the fittest. Mutations are changes in DNA that can create new traits. In elephant, tusklessness is an example of a mutation that can become more common because it helped elephants survive poaching. There are also three types of natural selection: directional, stabilizing, and disruptive selection. Tusklessness in elephants is an example of directional selection because one trait became favored over time. This shows how human activity can affect evolution and change animal populations. This slide connects elephants to Laudato Si and caring for the environment. My quote is, "We must be grateful for the praiseworthy efforts being made by scientists and engineers dedicated to finding solutions to man-made problems." In Laudato Si, Pope Francis talks about the importance of protecting the earth and solving environmental problems. The quote on the slide explains how scientists and engineers work to help the environment. Elephants are sometimes called environmental engineers because they help shape ecosystems. For example, elephants spread seeds through their waste and trunks, clear paths through forests, and create open spaces that help other species survive. Because of this, elephants help forestry grow and keep ecosystems balanced and healthy. This connects to the message of Laudato Si because it reminds us that humans have a responsibility to take care for nature and protect important species like elephants. Overall, elephants are important not only in biology but also in maintaining healthy ecosystems around the world.
Let's start at the very beginning, the cell. Cells are divided into two main categories, eukaryotic and prokaryotic. Prokaryotic cells are simpler and do not have a nucleus. Eukaryotic cells, like the animal cell shown here on the slide, are more complex and do contain a nucleus. Depending on the organism, eukaryotic cells can be autotrophic, meaning they make their own food, like plants, or heterotrophic, meaning they have to consume food, like us or elephants. The nucleus is the command center of the cell because it holds our genetic information and is where DNA and RNA synthesis happens. Scientists study this DNA through a gel electrophoresis. DNA overall has a negative charge, and because opposites attract, when we insert DNA into the wells of a gel electrophoresis machine and turn on an electric current, the negatively charged DNA naturally migrates toward the positive electrode. Now that we know where DNA lives, let's talk about how cells reproduce. Both mitosis and meiosis are processes used to create new cells, but they have completely different jobs. Mitosis creates somatic cells, which are your everyday body cells used for growth and tissue repair. Meiosis, on the other hand, creates sex cells, also known as gametes, which are eggs and sperm. Both processes go through interphase, where the cell prepares and grows for the G1, S, and G2 phases, followed by PMAT, which stands for prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. The big difference? Mitosis only goes through one round of PMAT and one interphase to make two identical cells. Meiosis goes through two rounds of PMAT, but still only one interphase, resulting in 4 unique cells. During the S phase of interphase, DNA is replicated. This replication is incredibly important, but it's also a time when mistakes can happen. These mistakes are called mutations. If a mutation happens in a somatic cell, it just affects that individual. But if a mutation happens during meiosis, that mutated DNA is passed down to the eggs or sperm. This means the children will inherit the mutated DNA. A real-world example of this is happening right now in Mozambique. The female elephants that mutated to become tuskless because of the high demand of their tusks for ivory trade are giving birth to tuskless female elephant children. The tuskless male children die before they are born, so the female children now contain that mutation from poaching. So, how does a mutation in DNA actually change a physical trait like an elephant's tusks? It all comes down to protein synthesis, which follows the central dogma of biology. First, transcription takes place. This is where the cell takes a specific DNA gene sequence and creates a temporary copy called messenger RNA or mRNA. Next, that mRNA goes through translation. During translation, the cell reads the mRNA code to string together amino acids, which fold up to make a protein. Proteins aren't just for muscles. Protein synthesis creates enzymes, which are biological tools. One specific type of enzyme used by scientists is called a restriction enzyme. Restriction enzymes act like molecular scissors. Scientists use them to cut long strands of elephant DNA at specific places. This creates distinct DNA fragments, or bands. Gel electrophoresis separates these exact DNA bands by size, allowing scientists to look at the unique genetic patterns of individual elephants. In ecology, the world is organized into levels of complexity. It begins with a single organism. When multiple organisms of the same species live and interact in the same area, they form a population. Different populations interacting together create a community. When that community interacts with non-living factors like water, soil, and sunlight, it forms an ecosystem. Multiple ecosystems with similar climates and living organisms make up a biome. Finally, all the biomes on Earth together form the biosphere, which includes all living things in their environments. In these ecosystems, certain organisms are classified as keystone species. A keystone species is an organism that has an incredibly high influence on its entire ecosystem. If you remove them, then the whole ecosystem can collapse. Elephants are a prime example of a keystone species. In the Mozambique savanna, they support their ecosystem in three major ways. The first way is seed dispersal. They eat seeds and spread them across vast distances through their dung. The second way is through clearing paths. Their massive size allows them to punch through thick brush, creating pathways for smaller animals. The third way is through creating water holes. They use their tusks and feet to dig into dry riverbeds, creating water holes that other wildlife rely on for survival. In Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si', he explains that the loss of forests and woodlands leads to the loss of species that may be extremely important in the future, not only for food but also for medicine and other essential resources. Elephants play a vital role in maintaining and stabilizing ecosystems. When elephant populations decline, biodiversity drops and the overall health of the ecosystem is disrupted. Unfortunately, elephants are currently endangered, with poaching being one of the major threats to their survival. When elephants are poached for ivory, it can also affect their genetics over time, which helps explain the rise in tuskless elephants. Without their tusks, they can't help their environments as much as they did before because they need their tusks for these tasks. Elephants are not just important as individual animals. They shape entire ecosystems by creating resources and habitats that many other species, including humans, depend on. Protecting them is not just about saving a single species. It's about preserving the balance of life that sustains us all. Thank you so much for listening about our studies on Gorongosa elephants. Olivia and I really hope that you all learned how important elephants are to our ecosystems today.